Social Strategy Podcast, episode 58. Hey guys, this is Vernon Ross, host of the Social Strategy Podcast. And before we get started, I want to let you guys know there were some audio issues with this podcast, but it is so good that I do not want to not publish it. However, this audio is going to sound a little bit louder than you're used to hearing because it's in mono. For whatever reason, it did not end up in stereo. So my audio editor couldn't fix it. I couldn't fix it. So we're just going to go with it. I just wanted to let you guys know that before you listen to the interview. However, it is not so bad and it will not detract away from the information that's in this interview. But the intro got messed up and had to be taken out along with some other issues. So if a couple of things at the beginning of the interview sound a little bit out of order, that's what that's about. All right, now on to the show.
Welcome to the Social Strategy Podcast, where it's all about making the most of your business with smart tips on what's working now in social media, online business, and good old-fashioned networking. And now your host, who's also known as Ross PR on Twitter, Vernon Ross.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Social Strategy Podcast, bringing you the best in online business, social media, and good old-fashioned networking. And I'm your host, Vernon Ross. And today we have a exciting show. I got a chance to talk about, finally, startups and the whole startup community and more about digital nomads and private equity investment and all kinds of stuff about obtaining companies instead of starting. And this was a really exciting interview for me. And I often get a chance to talk about the things that we did in the level of detail that we were able to provide in this interview. So I'm looking really forward into getting into this interview. But before we start, I wanted to let you guys know I'm going to be at Podcast Movement this weekend. So when this goes live, this is actually going to go live right before I go to Podcast Movement. But definitely check out a webinar that I did, and it's going to be on the same subject that I'm talking on at Podcast Movement, which is sponsorship for your podcast, your blog, your event, your business, whatever it is that you're involved in. I'm talking about sponsorship. Make sure you take advantage of the sponsorship toolkit that's in the Social Strategy Academy so you can download some of the phone scripts, templates, and things that I lay out there for you so you can actually get started on your path to obtaining sponsorship for whatever it is that you do. I also did a webinar this past week with Steve Stewart from the Audacity Workshop. It is amazing. You can find that link in the show notes. Full webinar, over an hour, just packed with information about sponsorship and some stories about how I've obtained sponsorship for different projects that I've worked on and how you can use that to leverage sponsorship in your podcast, on your blog, in your events. It was a really exciting webinar, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into the interview, and I will see you guys on the back end. Hey everyone, this is Vernon Ross, and welcome to the Social Strategy Podcast, bringing you the best in online business, social media, and good old-fashioned networking. And guys, I've not had too many startup people, digital nomads on. You guys know I had Natalie Sisson on. She was awesome. And I've got a new digital nomad. I actually found Shola through Jessica's company. I know I've talked to you guys about this before. She actually finds people for a podcast. And I had kind of not intentionally blown her off, but Jessica Rhodes, if you guys don't know who I'm talking about, I've talked about her in previous episodes. I didn't intentionally do it, but when we ran into each other at New Media Expo, I'm like, hey, you need to send me a couple people. I know I didn't answer your email, and Shola came out of that. I'm really happy to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, when I was looking into your background, I found a couple things I had some questions about. But first off, you've got a pretty impressive background. You went to the Royal Institute of Technology, KTH, over in Stockholm. Not a lot of people do. Well, a lot of people do that, but usually they're the founders of some pretty big companies.
Well, first of all, Vernon, remind me to send you something in PayPal for such a gracious introduction. I appreciate that. Just to kind of give you a heads up on kind of why I do what I do and who I am. So I'm a proud native Washingtonian. My mother is from Washington, D.C., Northwest, and my dad is from Nigeria. He immigrated to the States to study engineering at George Washington University. That's kind of why I have my colorful name. So I've always kind of, had an international background. And after working for the first startup that kind of took off, this was during the web 1.0 boom, kind of dating myself here. In any case, I just wanted to do something really different. And I'd been working in New York and, I'd worked in DC, and I just decided that I wanted to study abroad in Europe. I met some people on the holiday who had talked a lot about really great technical universities. And so I was looking at, either maybe going to back to the UK or studying in Sweden. And I just always have had a passion about technology and business, so it was a natural progression.